Super heavy tanks have always been a major interest of mine, and given how popular they are in the history community, I think it's safe to say I'm not alone. Designs like the Maus and E100 are truly marvels of engineering regardless of them being completely impractical. However, these were not the first super heavies dreamed up by the crazed minds of 1940s German tank development. Today we will be taking a look at the first true super heavy the Nazis designed, a tank commonly known today as the Löwe. Special thanks to my Conley fans for voting on this topic in the monthly poll.
Throughout history, there have been countless tanks, all designed to kill. But not all have been a success. What happened to the ones that never made it, and why did they fail? My name is Conevar. Join me as we journey through time, uncovering failed projects and forgotten creations in Cursed by Design.
This episode of Cursed by Design has been brought to you by the free online PvP strategy game Call of War. In Call of War, you take command of a World War II nation to fight battles against up to 100 other players in real-time battles which can last weeks as you clash over territory. To do this, you can use a plethora of units including tanks, which you obviously like if you clicked on this video. As you know, I'm a huge fan of most World War II era games, and I love the strategy aspects as well as being able to control vast tank armies to crush my opponents, and Call of War allows me to experience both of those things. Use the link in the description to download the game for free today, and you'll get an exclusive gift of 13,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription. This offer is only available for 1 month, so don't wait. Stay tuned till the end of the video for how you can also join a special game set up just for my viewers. The original specifications for the Löwe, or as it was originally designated, the VK7001, were far from what we would consider a super heavy. On November 1st, 1941, this project would seek to create a tank within the 70 metric ton weight class. Much of this weight would come from its incredibly thick armor with 140mm at the front and 100 on the sides. At this point, it was planned to use a Daimler-Benz engine from a Schnellboot which produced 1000 horsepower at 2400 RPM. The armament of this beast was yet to be decided, but it was intended to be crewed by a standard 5-crew layout used by most German tanks already and was to mount a fully traversable turret. On December 17, 1941, the design was given to Krupp for further development, with the maximum weight being increased to 90 tons. This definitively shifted the tank into the Super Heavy League. By January 21, 1942, Krupp presented a concept of what they envisioned for the VK7001. For its armament, they had chosen a 10.5cm KWK L70, which was capable of punching through a 160mm plate at 30 degrees at a range of 1,000 meters. At this point, Krupp was given a new engine for the tank designed by Maybach. The new HL230 was rated at 800 horsepower and was planned to enter production in January 1943, which would have roughly coincided with the tank's planned production. At a design conference in January of 1942, a number of ideas were thrown around. Many of the proposed changes were to the drivetrain, including the engine change I already mentioned, as well as other uninteresting or less noticeable aspects. Rather than try to list them all, I'll just mention some of the more interesting ones. As Hitler was a major proponent of large caliber cannons, it's no surprise that he pushed for the 128mm gun to be fitted to this new weight class of tank. However, as we mentioned before, Krupp decided to work with the 105mm, although they also planned for a turret with the much larger 150mm which would fit on the same hull. As with the later Maus, this large armament was not just intended for direct fire, but also to be usable as long-range artillery with its planned 35 to 40 degrees of elevation. Another element which was considered was the inclusion of a second small turret with a 75mm, but this was not possible due to space limitations. It appears that there was also some consideration given for a cannon within the 50 to 75mm size in a different mount, possibly coaxially like the earlier Neue Fahrzeug, but this never made it into the final design. This concept would eventually resurface in both the E100 and Maus designs. There was also a version of the VK7001 tossed around which featured a 90-ton weight featuring a rear-mounted turret. As February of 1942 arrived, the German Automotive Design Office decided to push for the completion of 2 Versuchsfahrzeuge, or experimental vehicles, in the 72-ton weight class. These tanks would not have the thicker armor of the original design, but were reduced to the same armor thickness and drivetrain of the Tiger tank. To add even more insanity to this already jumbled process, the tank was intended to enter series production without testing because nothing could possibly go wrong with an untested 70-plus ton tank, right? Krupp was awarded the contract for these two prototypes, with one being given a turret and the other only with weight to simulate the turret. Before work could even begin on the prototypes, another conference was held on March 5, 1942, with Hitler increasing the requirement to a 100-ton tank. Around this time, or possibly even during that meeting, the project was redesignated as the Löwe, or Lion. Some designations you may also see include Panzer VII and VK7201. Likely the 7201 designation arose from the 72-ton weight of the earlier designs. 2 prototypes were still expected, but Krupp planned to increase this to 10 prototypes. 2 weeks after Krupp received their updated instructions, Madman Porsche was also given a contract for a 100-ton design. As far as I can tell, this seems to be where the VK101 was born, which would eventually evolve into the Maus after several more following designs. I may be incorrect in saying that though, because as I'm sure you can imagine, nothing is simple when it comes to German tank development, so I may be mixing up the order of projects slightly. The German Army Ordnance Office decided the previously chosen 105 was insufficient and would not allow the tank to maintain a long-term superiority. To appease them, Krupp redesigned the previous turret to now house a 128mm or the 150mm. The guns proposed were a 50 caliber 128mm and a 40 caliber 150mm using one-piece ammunition to increase fire rate. As you can imagine, these shells were quite long, and this resulted in a revised version of the Löwe turret featuring a longer portion in the rear referred to as the rucksack, which would hold a ready rack. This changed the turret from the original rounded design to look much more like the Tiger II turret. This turret was also offered to Porsche for the VK101. With that being said, it appears despite these demands for a larger armament, even as late as the 29th of April 1942, there was no final decision made for the armament, but Krupp seems to have still been in favor of the 105mm even into May. By this point in the development, the program fell into a jumble of technical changes, but it seems that a 99-ton Löwe design featuring the 150mm was being eyed. However, with the prototypes being cancelled by mid-May and the entire program abandoned on June 7, 1942 in favor of pursuing the Maus, I see no reason in boring you with every minor detail. Despite some efforts to keep the design from being completely written off, it was clear that Hitler wanted larger and heavier tanks, which the Löwe, despite its nearly 100-ton weight, no longer fulfilled. 3 Löwe designs from Krupp designated W1668, W1669, and W1670 did see discussion, with one featuring the 88mm L71 gun and the other 2 featuring 150mm L37 guns. Through changes to the length and turret design, the weight was reduced to 80 tons for the 1668 and 1669, with the 1670 being closer to 90 due to the heavier 150mm ammo and thicker side armor. In theory, the design of this vehicle made it less prone to shot traps and easier to produce than the Tiger II, but likely as that program was already further underway, and with the Löwe being intended as a super heavy, this was not explored further. In the end, the VK7001 project resulted in a complex web of ideas, but was just too light by the increasingly insane standards of the German tank program. Aside from the design leading on to other later tanks, the 105mm the Löwe was originally planned to use saw some further development for use as an anti-tank gun, but this was also eventually discarded by the end of 1942. Although the Löwe program died off in 1942, it was brought back to life in World of Tanks, as well as the Panzer VII, which is based on the rear turreted design under the same program. Obviously, these tanks are likely not what the real Löwe would have looked like had it ever seen production, but nevertheless, it's a great demonstration of how the theoretical designs put on paper would have looked like. As I'm sure you can tell from watching this video, the development of the Löwe was an absolute mess of ideas, which on the surface don't really appear to lead anywhere. Obviously, it did lead to later designs, but as there is very little source material for the tank, this was by far one of my trickiest videos to research. Hopefully I haven't made any major mistakes or left out any important details, but if you think I did, please leave a comment below with solid sources. Like usual, my sources will be linked below, so if you absolutely must know every minor detail I skipped over for sake of time and my own sanity, you can pick those up and read them for yourself. Massive thanks to my Conley fans for voting on this topic, even if it melted my brain at times during the research. If you liked the video, be sure to show it by clicking the like button and subscribing for more videos like this. Once again, thanks to Call of War for sponsoring the video, and as I promised at the beginning of the video, you can use the game ID and password on screen now to join the special game created just for you guys and gals. So click the link in the description to get your free 13,000 gold and month of premium, then team up or battle with others in our community in-game. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.